Dear friends of the Club of Rome, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to have the opportunity to present to you some considerations around the topic of migration. Now, migration became an issue in the last year when we suddenly had 1 million of additional people in Europe, and many of them in Germany, and this migration somehow changed the public debate. I think for Europe to integrate 1 million or 5 million people should not be a problem. But we have so many people that get crazy when 1 million comes that we cannot integrate much more millions. If your fellow people get crazy, then you rather be very careful, because otherwise the system breaks down. And with Brexit and the situation in the US, we see now that let's say, unsatisfactory situation for a lot of people results in such a turmoil that it can break down all our structures. Of course, one can also put it the other way around. There is a statement that says, never change a running system. That means as long as there is no crisis, there is not so much the argument to do something. I mean, we from the Club of Rome would say, we see already the crisis in the future, so we have to do something now. But with a running system, you would be very careful to intervene if there's no problem. But as soon as there is a problem, it's a moment for the intervention. And intellectually, you should be prepared for that moment. So I always see my work very much as preparing myself and ourselves for the moment of a crisis. And this, what happened with migration, is the crisis in which the global problems suddenly are no longer far away. No, the problems come to us. And as soon as the problems come to us, it's our problem. And suddenly there is reaction, whatever that is. But Brexit is a reaction, and now it changed the whole political debate. With this in mind, we worked on the issue of migration, sustainability, and particularly the situation in Africa. And why Africa? Because the population in Africa might grow by a factor 4 within that century. And in the last century, it grew from 200 million to over 1 billion. And now it may grow from over 1 billion to over 4 billion, which would mean 3 billion additional people in Africa. And then possibly the climate change, with the effect that in parts of Africa is not possible to stay. That is, in a sense, the absolute disaster scenario for Europe. Because we, the natural partner, and we, the natural place to go to. So, going to the topic of migration and sustainability, we said the most important thing to concentrate on is to do something with Africa. So not a Marshall Plan for Africa, it's a Marshall Plan with Africa, in partnership with Africa. Now, we worked on this for quite a time, and we had 2 good conditions for our work. One is the Senate of the Economy, which is a German organization of entrepreneurs, was willing to partner with the Club of Rome on doing a study on that issue and finance that study. On the other hand, we had the support of the German Ministry for Development Cooperation with Minister Dr. Müller. You saw him already this morning. And this ministry is working on a Marshall Plan with Africa for the German government anyhow. So we had a very close cooperation, and we choose, let's say, intelligent timing by saying, first, we have this scientific study with the Club of Rome and the Senate. We have the perspective from the economic side, from entrepreneurs, and then the ministry will come out with the plan of the government. You may also have noted that in between we changed places because we had an official German press conference on that study, and in this press conference we presented the study to the minister. So we now officially presented this study to the German government. And what I now will do is I will give a few hints to the main positions of that study, which looks more like that. And this study at the moment is translated fully into English. There is a short version, will also be available in English. There is an additional volume with materials. All that stuff will be available in English and will be, of course, on the internet. And we are preparing for another political event in Brussels, where then the Senate of the Economy Europe, together with the Club of Rome, would also deliver this scientific report to the European Commission, because the topic Africa is, of course, not a German topic. It is a topic, a European topic. Now, looking into our main positions, the first we said is, it is not necessarily the case that the population in Africa must grow to 4 billion. It could also grow to 2 billion and stay there. And it is something we have to act on, that it stays with 2 billion and not with 4 billion. And to have it stabilize with 4 billion is something that has to do with reasonable living standards, education, the situation of women, and many other topics. But it is not enough to wait for, hopefully, eventually, we will have a high standard of living in Africa and a good situation with women's rights and good education, because if we wait to achieve this with the aim that afterwards we not have so many babies, we always have so many babies before we reach the aim that we never reach the aim. So we must address the population issue, and this is what we do in the report. We address clearly the population issue, and one of the core messages is build social systems, support every African state that wants to build a social system, social security insurance, and put money into such social security systems under certain conditions. The second point is, and now I asked Mr. Huber, there is time running, but it doesn't change. So something is not okay with the time running here. Yeah, I only mentioned that. Yeah, somebody has to do something about it. Yeah. We looked into the issue: how much money do we invest at the moment? Germany, how much do we invest per person in Africa per year? And for me, the outcome is a scandal. It's just 2 euros. It is maybe our biggest challenge, and we invest 2 euros. If we take German unification, how much time do I know? No, 6 minutes. Okay. If we take German unification, we put 4,000 euro per person per year in a rich country, and in a poor country, what do? we take 2 euros. Last year was the Addis Ababa conference on international finance of development with the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. They said we have to go from billions to trillions. If we want to achieve sustainability, it means go from billions to trillions. That means whatever you do, at least do a factor 10 more. So yeah, that is our perspective here. Much more money, but this combined with a more reasonable economic system, with clear action against this tendency to take taxes out of Africa, the tendency not to pay taxes at all, and this is combined with putting money into Africa, but only under these institutional changes. What do we want to use as a joker for economic development? It is the potential of Africa for energy. We see renewable energy as the key for a sustainable future. I don't have the opinion that many in this room share here that the problem is growth. I think it's the wrong position to argue growth is the problem on this planet. If we want to bring billions of people which are in poverty into a reasonable state of living, we need massive growth. But the growth must be inclusive and it must be compatible with sustainability, so it must be green and inclusive growth. We never made it, but that we never made it doesn't mean that we should now say growth is the problem. No, for a rich world in peace, growth is the key, but we must achieve a growth that is inclusive and green. And this is what we concentrate on, and we know energy is the key. And this is the point where Africa has advantages, where the Sahara is an advantage, where the equator is an advantage. There is the sun, and there is other renewables available, cheap available, and we must use that energy as a joker. And from that energy, we must create the water needed by, if needed, desalination, but climate neutral. We must transport the water, but climate neutral. We must plant trees to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere. We must use the wood, the timber for construction. We must show that a completely different economy is possible, and that it can create money, but by protecting the environment and allowing more social balance. And we have to show this to the world, and the Marshall Plan with Africa is about that issue. We propose to the German government to make this a message to the world, use the EU-African Summit and the G20 Summit next year, and of course combine that with other issues. We need a clever migration policy to the advantage of all parties involved. Today, the remittances, money sent back by migrants into their home country, they have a volume of about $450 billion a year, which is 3 times overseas aid. Migrants' remittances are a very important cornerstone for development and for the financing in poorer countries. So yes, we want a reasonable policy of migration. And what we also want is our share in people that are in need and need a new home. The asylum topic of the Geneva Convention is something that we think is important, but it cannot solve the Africa problem. The Africa problem is about having a massively increased wealth situation for 2 billion of people with renewables in a way that is compatible with sustainability. We have to show that it works. And now with the new situation in the US, Europe has even more to show that it works. It is our job because it is primarily our problem, and if we act on it, we act to our own advantage. Now, an important part of what we suggest is a fund for the future of Africa, and essentially The German side should bring in 120 billion over the next 15 years. The money should half go into building social systems and half it should go into investments for infrastructure and companies. And we did a lot of work to find a reasonable structure. This is the structure, to structure this in a way that the money inflow essentially comes from the private sector. So the government guarantees that investment in the sense of bonds, but the money itself doesn't come from the state budget. It comes from investors which have a chance of earning money. And this money is invested into infrastructures. And here is the effect from billions to trillions, because we have to go in the dimension of trillions if we want to change the situation in Africa. I'm very happy that the Senate of the Economy and the Club of Rome together could work 1 year on that. I think we have a profound document. We were very happy that Mr. Müller for the German government accepted that document and takes it as input in the own plan for Africa, with Africa, that the German government is working on. Thank you very much.